You notice it before anyone says a word. The room feels a little different. A text sounds slightly colder. Someone's face stays the same, but the warmth behind it feels gone. Other people do not always catch these things, but you do. You notice when a pause lasts too long, when a smile looks right but feels wrong, when someone says, "I'm okay," and something in you quietly says, "No, they are not." And maybe the strangest part is this: you are right often enough to trust that feeling, but not always enough to feel calm. So you keep scanning, keep reading, keep adjusting yourself to things no one else even seems to notice. That is where the exhaustion begins. Because this is not just about being observant. It is about what your brain has learned to treat as important. People usually call this sensitivity. Sometimes they call it overthinking. But for many people, it is something deeper than both. It is a nervous system that learned small changes can mean big things. A tone change can mean distance. A silence can mean anger. A delayed reply can mean withdrawal. A tiny shift can feel like the beginning of rejection. If that sounds familiar, it usually did not appear out of nowhere. At some point, your brain may have learned that subtle emotional changes mattered. Maybe you grew up around unpredictable moods. Maybe the people around you were loving sometimes, distant other times. Maybe peace in the room depended on reading someone correctly before they spoke. When that happens often enough, your mind adapts. It becomes fast, sharp, quietly alert. Not because you are broken, because your brain is efficient. It starts paying attention to the earliest possible signs of change, not the full argument, the breath before it, not the rejection itself, the feeling that something just shifted. This is why you can walk into a room and feel tension without anyone saying anything obvious. Why you can hear one sentence and immediately sense that someone's energy is off. Why even normal conversations can become mentally tiring. Because your brain is not only listening to words, it is reading patterns. It is reading timing, rhythm, tone, facial softness, body distance, silence. And all of that happens very quickly. In psychology, this often connects to something called hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is not just being careful. It is when the brain becomes unusually alert to possible danger, tension, or rejection. It acts like an internal guard that rarely fully rests. It watches for clues. It tries to predict what is about to happen. It wants to catch discomfort early, before it becomes pain. That sounds useful, and sometimes it is. But it comes with a cost. Because once your brain becomes skilled at detecting shifts, it can start treating uncertainty as a threat. And uncertainty is everywhere. That is why a small change in someone's mood can pull your whole attention toward it. You stop being present. You start analyzing. Did I do something wrong? Did they lose interest? Are they upset with me? Should I say something? Should I fix it? This is the moment where noticing turns into self-surveillance. You are no longer just observing another person. You are monitoring yourself through their reactions. That is why this pattern affects identity, not just emotion. You may become the person who always checks the vibe first, the person who softens their words carefully, the person who reads the room before becoming fully visible in it. You may even start shaping your personality around emotional safety, not because that is who you truly are, but because it feels safer to adapt than to risk being misunderstood, rejected, or caught off guard. This is where the reframe matters. You are not weak for noticing these things. You are not dramatic for feeling the shift. And you are not broken because your mind picks up what others miss. Very often, this pattern is an adaptation. Your brain learned that emotional detail matters, so it built a system to detect it quickly. That system may be tiring now, but it probably helped you before. It may have helped you avoid conflict. It may have helped you stay emotionally prepared. It may have helped you survive environments where being unaware felt dangerous. So the goal is not to shame this part of yourself. The goal is to understand it. Because once you understand the mechanism, you stop treating yourself like the problem. A useful way to think about this is to imagine your brain as a smoke detector. Some smoke detectors only react when there is actual fire. Others react when toast burns a little. A sensitive nervous system works in a similar way. It catches emotional smoke early, a shifted tone, a flat reply, a missing softness. The problem is not that the detector works. The problem is that it may go off before there is real danger. And that happens because the brain is not just reacting to the present, it is predicting. This is one of the most important ideas in psychology and neuroscience. Your brain is constantly trying to guess what things mean before you fully process them. It takes small cues from the present and combines them with old experience. Then it creates a prediction. Small cue, old memory, fast meaning, emotional reaction. That whole process can happen in seconds. So when you feel a shift in someone's energy, part of what you are sensing may be real. But part of it may be your brain filling in the blank with old information. That is why one short message can feel heavier than it should. Your mind is not only reading the message, it is reading every message that ever felt like distance. That is why this pattern can feel so convincing. It is not random fear. It is pattern recognition mixed with emotional memory. And that is also why the solution is not to become less sensitive. It is to become more accurate. The first thing that helps is separating observation from interpretation. When you feel a change, name only what you actually noticed, not what it means, just what happened. Their reply was shorter than usual. That is observation. They are upset with me. That is interpretation. This matters because the brain tends to move too quickly from signal to story. And once the story forms, the body reacts as if it is already true. When you slow that process down, you give yourself space. You let the thinking part of the brain come back online instead of letting fear make the first decision. The second thing is to check your body before you trust your conclusion. Sometimes what feels like bad energy in the room is your own nervous system already in a defensive state. If your chest is tight, your breathing is shallow, your jaw is tense, your brain starts scanning for a reason. It wants to explain the discomfort, and the fastest explanation is usually external. That is why self-awareness matters here. Before asking what changed in them, ask what is happening in you. Are you tired, already anxious, carrying tension from earlier, feeling unseen before this conversation even started? The body influences perception more than most people realize. A stressed body makes the world look sharper, colder, and more threatening. The third thing is to respect patterns more than moments. One-off interaction can mean almost anything. A repeated pattern tells a clearer story. This helps because the anxious mind often reacts to single moments as if they are final proof. But behavior is more reliable over time than in isolated fragments. Maybe someone sounded distant once because they were overwhelmed. Maybe the room felt off because everyone was tired. Maybe the shift you noticed was real, but not about you. Patterns bring clarity. Moments often bring projection. The fourth thing is to stop assuming every emotional shift requires your response. This is where many people get trapped. You sense discomfort, and immediately you want to fix it. You explain more, you become softer, you shrink a little, you try to restore the warmth. But every time you do that automatically, you teach your brain that constant monitoring is necessary for safety. That creates a loop. You detect something, you adjust yourself, you feel temporary relief. Then your brain learns, good, keep scanning. That is how hypervigilance gets reinforced. Sometimes real healing begins when you notice the shift and do not rush to manage it. You let this silence exist. You let another person's mood belong to them for a moment. You stay connected to yourself instead of abandoning yourself to restore the atmosphere. That teaches the brain something new. Not every discomfort becomes danger. Not every change becomes loss. Not every pause needs rescue. And maybe that is the deeper lesson underneath all of this. You are not just an antenna. You are an interpreter. Yes, you notice things. Yes, your sensitivity is real. Yes, some of your instincts are deeply accurate. But sensitivity without reflection becomes burden, and sensitivity with reflection becomes wisdom. The difference is not in what you notice, it is in what you do with what you notice. You do not need to stop feeling the room. You do not need to become numb. You do not need to pretend you are unaffected by subtle things. You only need to remember that noticing is not the same as obeying. You can feel the shift without making it your fault. You can sense the change without reshaping yourself around it. You can read the energy without disappearing inside your interpretation of it. That is what peace looks like for a person like you. Not blindness, not indifference, not emotional distance. Just enough inner steadiness that every tiny change outside of you does not get to rewrite what is happening inside of you. Because the truth is, your sensitivity may have started as survival, but it does not have to stay in survival forever. It can become discernment. It can become emotional intelligence. It can become a quieter, wiser way of seeing. And maybe that is the thought worth keeping. You were never too much for noticing what others miss. You were only carrying a mind that learned early that small signals matter. Now the real work is learning which signals belong to the present and which ones are only echoes.